All right, this is going to be the first video in our series of different bedding materials for worm bins. Follow along, it's going to be fun. Like and subscribe for more great videos. All right, so today we're going to talk about the different types of beddings that you can use. And so the way bedding is basically it's the base that you put into your worm bin before you put the worms in, right? So then it goes the bedding on the bottom, then you put the worms in, then you start adding food, and then you can put bedding again. And so what happens if you have like your standard two-tote worm bin, or even like a CFT, you can do this. It works really well with them. So you put the bedding down first, and you want something as neutral as possible as far as pH levels and stuff that the worms are going to like, right? So let's talk about what they're going to like. Okay, so the basic material. So we're going to start with shredded material, right? So you've got paper. You want to avoid your standard office paper because of the bleach in it. People don't like it, and you probably want to keep that kind of material away from your worms anyway. Cardboard, again, my favorite. Newspaper, we use it. I don't like it as much because it sticks together, and so it becomes a big clumpy mess. The worms love it, but then they get trapped in it for days, and it's hard to pull them out of there. All right, so then next, manure, right? Everybody's favorite. Okay, so horse and cow are the two favorites. Okay, but it needs to be aged, right? Because if you put it straight from the horse directly into your worm bin, it's gonna heat up, and it's going to kill your worms. Some of this stuff, depending on what else you do with the worms. So you want to age it a little bit. You know, most people say 3 to 6 months. Other ones that we've seen, rabbit, other small rodents, I guess, like guinea pigs and things like that, because their diet's really good. We have an abundance of alpaca, and so that manure is awesome, although technically you don't even need to send it through the worm bin to get good compost material out of it, but we do, just because it's even better that way. I'd rather have castings than alpaca poop. But so these shouldn't need to be aged. What a lot of people do is they'll put their rabbit cages and put a worm bin underneath it, and that will help so that, you know, as the rabbits go, it just starts going and being made into castings, right? So those are your manures. The next is straw and hay. So that's something else that people use. I'm not a fan of hay because I would rather use that for animal feed, but straw is great. So if you're using it as bedding in like animal pens, it's great. You just gotta be careful of like urine content and things like that, because like your rabbit urine and things, they get a little acidic. So you just want to be careful with that and monitor it. Don't just do strictly straw and hay. Then we have peat, and I'm going to put in pit. Those are the two mosses. I like peat. Worms seem to love it. Pit moss is kind of cool. It's basically recycled material, so it's like the shredded newspaper, and I think they use cardboard and things like that, and it's like a synthetic peat moss. So that's kind of a neat thing. Another one, wood chips, you have to age. You absolutely have to age. You know, fresh wood chips would be probably too acidic, you know, the moisture content on them would be pretty bad too. But they're fine. You know, once they're aged, they're great, because you don't want it to heat up too much, because you can see that a lot of this stuff is stuff that you put into a regular old compost bin. Actually, all of this stuff you put into a regular compost bin. And so it can heat up if you're not careful. So you don't want to put, you know, a foot of wood chips and then a foot of food scraps in your bin. It would be a mess. And then everyone's favorite is cocoa coir. This is the one that everyone kind of pushes for worm bins. Again, it's basically the stuff from the husks of coconuts. So again, it's similar to like a food scrap essentially, because that's where you're going to be getting it from. And then other ones that I've seen are leaves and compost, right? So when we're talking about aging some of this stuff, that kind of is becoming compost, right? So you can use compost because once it's gone through the hot cycle and it starts cooling down, you can use it for your worms. Absolutely. Leaves. So leaves I like in outdoor worm bins. I don't like them in indoor worm bins because you're bringing those leaves in. Who knows what was living on those leaves or laid eggs on those leaves. And so if you bring it into an indoor worm bin, you're going to end up with slugs and things like that, which, you know, not the end of the world, but you might be bringing in other pests. The other thing is you want to make sure that you avoid certain leaves or pre-compost them a little bit. On our property, we have a lot of black walnut, and that has something called juglone. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And oak, which has tannins. And so the black walnut will kill the worms. And so you want to pre-compost that. And then the tannins in the oak leaves is a bit too acidic. And so you want to pre-compost that stuff. So I don't like using leaves around here just because of the other stuff that we have, the types of leaves we have and the availability of the other stuff. We have all of this other stuff that's available readily. So why even get something that I'm going to stress out about, you know, accidentally burning or poisoning or whatever with the worms? I'd rather something be as basic as possible. So now my plan had originally been to show you all the worm bins that we set up, right? So cardboard and peat moss, right? Those are the two that we use for our worm bins. But I'm going to kind of have fun with this. I think I'm going to set up, I should be able to get all of this material and create one worm bin of each type. So that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13 worm bins. And we'll set those up and we'll monitor them and see how each of them does. We're just going to do them as the standard 2 bin. I'm not going to do a CFT because that would be a lot of CFTs. So we're just going to do a standard worm bin setup with this material, and I'll show you how we set the bin up. All right, stay tuned.